him on his face, how much he cared. And this is so different. He's from that era of Terry DeHare and Bobby and Kenny Wilson, all kids who grew up in the city who they burn to get recognition. They want to be known, like walking down the street, they want somebody to say, oh, hey, that's Bobby Hurley, or that's Kenny Wilson, or that's Mike Rosario. Most kids don't look for that anymore. You know, Mike wanted a recognition here in the city. He wanted people to say them. That was his self-esteem. And those kids used to be.
Or the kids today are taking the easy way out, not putting the work in and getting recognition in a negative way.
Whereas Mike would take a ball, and he might ask Gary, what time is the club going to open? And if the club was going to open on a certain day at a certain time, and maybe there'd be no activities for a while, that meant that Mike could run right up to the gym and shoot. And we tell a story all the time about Mike in high school. At the end of every single practice of his high school career, we rent a gym, and the gym we only have till 6:30. Mike would fight us for how long he could shoot before the next people who rent the building would take over. So there was, even if we had a light practice and we would finish early, a few minutes early, you'd be putting away your stuff and you'd look, and he's still out there shooting. He would develop a relationship with the people that come in after us that rent, and he would go over and talk to them all, which gave him in his mind a little time to continue to shoot while they were organizing themselves for the next rental. And it carried over. In college this year as a freshman, there was a story in the New York Star Ledger, and this is what, as a coach, you get juiced over this, because that enthusiasm remaining a kid is what we hope will happen more. We're losing it. The kids, they think they're bigger than life. The internet's turned them into stars, and they don't realize that you don't, you know, everything is in stages, and you're supposed to be a kid with certain interests, working on things. Well, Mike went to see a game, and I think it could have been St. Benedict's against St. Pat's Elizabeth, 7:30 game at night at the rack. So there's a big crowd. Mike goes over there after practice. Some of the other kids from Rutgers are over there watching the game, and the game ends about 9 o'clock. And Mike, and this is almost, I don't think it'll ever change, Mike now runs from his seat in the stands like Clark Kent running to the phone booth now. And he disappears for a moment, and he's right back in the gym. And he's got his Rutgers uniform stuff from his locker, and he gets a ball, and he realizes that because the two teams are in the locker and they got to clean the place, there's a good hour that the lights are going to be on at Rutgers. So in the middle of the college basketball season, Mike runs in, changes, comes out and shoots for an hour. He gets one of the custodial guys who probably shouldn't have been shagging rebounds for him. He gets the ball from him, and he shoots for an hour. And it kind of appears in every newspaper because everybody was following that big high school game, two great teams. So, you know, when he's asked about it after it, he said, well, there was an opportunity to shoot for an hour. The lights are going to be on. There was, you know, my stuff is in the locker there.
He didn't think it was a big deal.
You know, and I know he thought for, no, Mike, and Gary knows him very well. He thought for 1 second, do I have all my work done? And when he thought, yeah, I think I have all my work done, he's going to shoot for an hour. And what did he do this year? He was, I think he was the #3 freshman scorer in the country. And he was broke Phil Sellers' record at Rutgers, most points ever scored by a freshman. And Gary sees him during the season. I think we see him at a home game, and he comes up to Gary and he says, haven't I gotten taller? How much stronger am I getting right now? He's still a kid. We're so excited by that. And when I talk to him on the phone or I see him, I just keep my fingers crossed that we can keep that going as long as possible, because it's difficult now. The world, the adults are making it hard for kids to be kids because they build them up when they're very young, when they're not ready for this adulation. And then if they don't reach the heights that the adults predicted from them, they could become failures when they're just learning how to play the game right now.
What advice could you give to parents, Coach, right now? You know, because a lot of
sports
obsessed society.
Absolutely, you're right. Yeah. I think the most important thing you can do is, like, if I look back at my own sons, and I kind of thought they were going to play basketball in high school, but as they were growing up, they played everything. They were busy all the time doing stuff. They played a Little League. They ran track. You know, they both tried karate. Disaster. They were both involved in swimming. The city kids, they were terrible swimmers. So they went through everything. They got tennis rackets. So the two of them would go down to the courts and play tennis. So they did stuff to be competitive, to stay busy. And they were always working on their athleticism in everything that they tried. You know, a million wiffle ball games, playing stickball, playing all that stuff. But they did things all the time. They never suffered burnout from their own sport. I think if a kid starts at 9 and he does nothing but play basketball all the time, there's going to be times when the parents are going to have to urge him to go play. I think when somebody's urging you to go play, when the sport becomes difficult, you're not going to be Mike Rosario, who plays for the love of the sport. Yet Mike grew up playing football. He was a quarterback. He was a shortstop in baseball.
Tell him how great of a pitcher.
He was a great baseball player, and I made him play 2 years of high school baseball because
Right.
I thought I think with proper work, and I still think to this day, if he had stayed with baseball, I think he would have been drafted ultimately in baseball. But I had him play as long as I could get him to play, and just let them. If you can, I guess it's difficult. If you're going to get involved with your child in a sport, don't be sitting on the side with the piece of paper going down the list of things they should be doing. Go out, pick up the ball, and play. And then you'll understand how difficult the sport is if you're out there playing. The legendary games in my neighborhood are my sons and I going to the park where we lived. And the park was always empty. So until Bobby was about 15, Danny's about 15, I used to play them one-on-one. And when they started to beat me, I retired. But I had a real good winning, like a very good winning percentage. But now I didn't like this thing that I was losing to them. So then I think by 15, they're now doing more stuff. But I think you got to let kids grow. They have to develop their love of the sport. And it's not so important to be good. I mean, the success stories from this place, Rashawn McLeod, Ahmad Nivens, Terry DeHare, kids that were just good players in high school, but they were late developers physically. They kept getting better. Terry DeHare played in the NBA. Rashawn McLeod played in the NBA. Rashawn didn't start on our freshman team. Terry DeHare didn't start a varsity game till he was a senior. Ahmad Nivens didn't play organized basketball until he was a junior in high school, really.
Terry played Little League Baseball, came to
Terry
St.
was a
Anthony's as a
baseball
baseball
player.
player.
Basketball was his second sport. And Ahmad was the Atlantic 10 and Big 5 Player of the Year, and he's only been playing basketball for 6 years. So, it's nice to be involved in the child's sports career, but they have to kind of take a step back. Because if you don't take a step back, you're never really going to enjoy it. And I'm not so sure that the child won't get burned out because sometimes they're being pushed into playing the one thing too much instead of getting involved. Like getting involved in a good game of stickball or playing two-hand touch with your friends is athletic. And then, the next day there may be better weather and all of a sudden the kids are playing basketball for a couple hours until they reach the age where they start to look around and they start to put some of those things to the side, and all of a sudden touch football becomes every other Saturday. And there's more days of basketball, and now the kid is playing baseball and basketball alone, and I think the other thing is I think if a kid has a second sport in high school that complements the sport that's his main sport, in this day and age where the kids are, obesity is one of the biggest problems we face right now with our young people.
Right.
They're just not as active. I was telling stories yesterday to kids at a thing I went to about growing up in Jersey City and like running home after school, 3 o'clock, changing and staying outside until you heard the church bells at 6.
Right.
And that meant everybody in the middle of a game, somebody's in the middle of like pitching, the church bells would ring and the game would stop right there. Everybody would run home to eat. And now maybe 2/3 of those come back out again after dinner. Some might have homework issues or whatever. And then the street lights would be the next thing.
And when you were a kid, you were probably playing stickball in the street.
I played everything.
And one of the incredible things, Coach, that I think too with these kids is you ask these inner city kids, have you had breakfast? Oh, they didn't eat any breakfast. I mean, you have these kids here at school, and you think, all right, they must have eaten something. They went to school. I mean, are you shocked sometimes when you talk to them and you find out what they're eating?
Well, yeah, well, here, 2 issues. The kids don't understand the importance of food, and second thing is the way they're being raised. A lot of poor kids here. Right. So when it comes to like the breakfast, we've had kids here that have blossomed once we found out exactly what their diet was. Right. So we have a breakfast program. We try to put some money into the breakfast program, have kids that are really, needy, they'll have breakfast, and then we'll also, get it with lunch, and hope that now at home we're able to at least get that third meal at home because, food is fuel. And if you don't have the fuel, a kid who becomes Mike Rosario is a perfect example. At the end of the morning, every day as a freshman, by late morning before lunch, he couldn't sit through class anymore. And he used to sit down at Sister Allen's office and say to Sister, I can't do it anymore. I can't concentrate. I'm not as smart as the other kids. And it would wind up combination of He had never had that academic